Move it, gorilla. This isn't charity school. The shove knocked her back, palms to her chest, sending her backpack sliding and her books skittering across the concrete as laughter erupted and phones lifted. That's right, he sneered, blocking her path. You don't belong here. She crouched to gather the pages, jaw tight, breath even. The hoodie hid wrists trained for distance, timing, control. He stepped closer, still talking, still sure. She rose slowly, feet setting on instinct, and punched him, a single clean strike snapping his arrogance mid-word. They thought they were mocking a charity case. What they didn't know is that they'd just cornered a weapon. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. Denise Bell's worn Honda Civic pulled into Whitestone Academy's circular driveway, the engine sputtering slightly as they came to a stop. Through the windshield, marble columns loomed against the pale morning sky. A Confederate memorial plaque gleamed dully on the building's facade. You sure about this, baby? Denise's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. We could look at other schools. Zariah adjusted her backpack straps, her expression calm and steady. Mom, we talked about this. Better academics mean better college chances. I'll be fine. I know that look, Denise said softly. Just remember what we discussed. Sometimes staying low keeps you alive, Zariah finished. I remember. She leaned over and kissed her mother's cheek. Love you. The morning air was crisp as Zariah stepped out of the car. Students milled around the entrance, their chatter dying down as she approached. Eyes followed her every move, some curious, others hostile. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. Inside the main office, a secretary with bottle-blonde hair barely glanced up. Name? Zariah Bell. I'm new. The secretary shuffled through some papers. Your schedule. Maps on the back. She slid the papers across the counter without making eye contact. Behind the secretary's desk, framed photographs showed football teams through the decades, all white faces, all proud poses. A bronze plaque declared, Heritage Not Hate, Confederate Memorial Society. Zariah's stomach tightened, but her face remained neutral as she took her schedule. The hallway was packed with students when she stepped out. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Phones came out. Yo, McVeigh! Someone called out. Check it out. Looks like admissions finally hit their diversity quota. Laughter rippled through the crowd. A tall boy with perfect teeth and an expensive haircut stepped forward, wearing a varsity jacket like armor. Bryce McVeigh's smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, well, he drawled. Affirmative action. Barbie comes to Whitestone. More laughter. Did you get lost on your way to public school? Zariah kept walking, her steps measured and controlled. She'd learned young. Reaction was what they wanted. She found her locker, opened it smoothly despite the whispers and stares. First period, American history. The teacher, Mr. Patterson, barely acknowledged her presence. The lesson covered the Civil War, from the Confederate perspective. Zariah took notes mechanically, ignoring the sideways glances and snickers. By lunch, her jaw ached from keeping her expression neutral. The cafeteria was a sea of white faces as she carried her tray to an empty table. She felt Bryce's presence before she saw him, that predatory energy she recognized from years of dealing with bullies. His foot shot out as she passed. The tray flew from her hands, sending milk, pasta, and fruit salad everywhere. Most of it landed on her clothes. The cafeteria erupted in laughter and the distinctive sound of phone cameras clicking. Oops, Bryce said loudly. Guess she's not used to our floors yet. Zariah stood perfectly still, pasta sauce dripping down her shirt. Her hands didn't shake as she grabbed napkins from a nearby dispenser. The laughter continued as she cleaned herself up. then the floor. "Need help there?" Coach Holloway's voice boomed across the cafeteria. He stood near Bryce, a hand on his nephew's shoulder. "Accidents happen, right, McVeigh?" "Sure do, Coach," Bryce grinned. "Just trying to help the new girl feel welcome?" Coach Holloway chuckled. "Get to practice, son." He walked away without another word to Zariah. The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispers and isolation. Teachers called on everyone but her. Students moved seats when she sat nearby. Her last class worksheet came back with a D, though she knew every answer was correct. When Denise picked her up, Zariah climbed into the car silently. "Baby?" Her mother's voice was careful. "How was it?" "Fine." Zariah stared straight ahead. "Your shirt?" "Spilled my lunch." "No big deal." At home, Zariah changed clothes and started her homework at the kitchen table. Denise moved around the kitchen, preparing dinner, shooting worried glances at her daughter. "You know," Denise said finally, "if anyone's giving you trouble—" "Mom." Zariah looked up. "I'm handling it. That's what worries me." Denise set down her spatula. "I taught you to defend yourself, but sometimes I'm not scared of them." Zariah's voice was quiet but firm. "Maybe you should be." Denise sat down. "These people, they have money, power. They can hurt you in ways that— So I should just let them." Zariah's eyes flashed. "Like you let him hurt us for years?" Denise flinched. Zariah immediately regretted her words. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean—" "No." Denise reached across the table, took her daughter's hand. "You're right. I let fear control me too long. But, baby, I just want you safe." "I know." Zariah squeezed her mother's hand. "I am safe. You made sure of that." That night, Zariah lay in bed, staring at her ceiling. She thought about Bryce's smirk, Coach Holloway's laugh, the teacher's indifference. She thought about her mother's fear, born from years of abuse before she finally fought back. The next morning, Zariah dressed carefully. Black hoodie, comfortable pants, her favorite sneakers. She put in her earbuds, pulled up her hood, and walked through Whitestone's doors again. Her face was calm, her stride confident. Let them stare. Let them whisper. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to learn, and not just what they taught in classrooms. Second period arrived too quickly. Zariah walked into the girls' locker room, her steps measured and deliberate. The usual whispers and stares followed her, but she kept her focus, changing quickly into her gym clothes. Years of training had taught her to stay aware of her surroundings while appearing casual. The locker room emptied as girls filed out for class. Zariah waited until the crowd thinned, then followed. She'd learned that moving with the pack only invited accidental shoves and elbows. Coach Holloway stood in the gymnasium, whistle dangling from his thick neck. "Line up," he barked. 2 laps around the gym, then stretches. Zariah took her place at the back of the group. As they began running, she maintained a steady pace, keeping distance between herself and the other students. The squeaking of sneakers echoed off the high ceiling. "Hey!" a voice cut through the noise. "Affirmative action! Coach said run, not walk." Bryce jogged backward, facing her with that trademark smirk. 2 of his teammates flanked him, Jake Miller and Todd Peterson, both wearing their varsity jackets despite the workout. Zariah kept her pace, eyes forward. Her muscles tensed instinctively, reading their body language. They were positioning themselves, trying to box her in near the bleachers. "What's wrong?" Bryce taunted. "Too ghetto to keep up?" The rest of the class had moved ahead, leaving them isolated in the corner of the gym. Coach Holloway was occupied with his phone, deliberately not looking their way. Zariah's mind clicked into assessment mode, just as her mother had taught her. 3 opponents, limited space, multiple witnesses, but none likely to help. She reached for her phone to record their harassment. Bryce's hand shot out, slapping the phone from her grip. It clattered across the floor. "Oops," he sneered. "Butterfingers." Jake grabbed her wrist. Maybe she needs private lessons on how we do things at Whitestone. It was the grip that did it. 8 years old again, trapped in a corner while her father's fingers dug into her arm. But this time, she wasn't helpless. Zariah moved. The wrist lock was instant and brutal. Jake's eyes widened in shock as his arm twisted at an unnatural angle. His knees buckled. She drove him down, using his own momentum against him. He hit the floor with a heavy thud. Bryce's fist came swinging. Telegraphed, sloppy, all ego and no technique. Zariah sidestepped smoothly. Her strike was precise, targeted, hitting his solar plexus with controlled force. The sound he made was more shock than pain as he folded in half, all the air leaving his lungs. Todd charged like a bull, exactly as she'd expected. Pure emotion, no strategy. The leg sweep was almost casual. One moment he was rushing forward, the next he was staring at the ceiling, gasping for breath. The entire sequence took less than 10 seconds. Phones were out now, recording everything. Students stood frozen, mouths open. Coach Holloway had finally looked up, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. Zariah didn't run, didn't hide. She completed her stance, centered her breathing, and began walking toward her fallen phone. The gym was dead silent except for 3 sets of pained groans. Jake tried to stand but wobbled back down. Bryce was still doubled over, his face red with humiliation and lack of oxygen. Todd hadn't moved from his spot on the floor. Did you see that?" Someone whispered from the crowd. Another voice, filled with awe. "Wait, is she trained?" "Yo!" A third student gasped. "She's a black belt?" Zariah picked up her phone, checked it for damage, and turned to face the stunned onlookers. Her voice was steady, calm, and carried an edge that made everyone shiver. "Second degree. Learn before you leap." The silence stretched as she walked away, every step deliberate. She could feel their stares, their phones still recording. The whispers started again, but different now, tinged with respect, with fear. Behind her, Coach Holloway finally found his voice. "Office! Now!" Zariah kept walking, her head high. Each step echoed in the quiet gym. She'd known this moment would come, had prepared for it since the first day. They'd chosen her as a target, assuming she was weak, helpless, alone. They'd chosen wrong. Students pressed against the walls as she passed, giving her a wide berth. Some still filmed. Others texted frantically. The story would be all over the school in minutes. She didn't care. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Never start a fight, but if they bring one to you, make sure they remember why they shouldn't have." 3 of Whitestone's top athletes lay on the ground, taken down by the girl they'd thought was an easy target. The girl they'd harassed, mocked, and cornered. The girl who'd been training since she was 8 years old, turning fear into power, pain into purpose. The heavy gym doors closed behind her with a decisive thud. The noise seemed to break the spell. Chaos erupted in the gymnasium. Voices raised in excitement, confusion, and alarm. But Zariah didn't look back. They'd learned their first lesson. There would be consequences, of course. Suspension, probably. Angry calls from parents. Attempts to twist the story. But the truth was already spreading through the school. Phone to phone. Whisper to whisper. The new girl wasn't just another target. She was trained. She was dangerous. And she'd just shown everyone exactly what happened when they pushed too far. The fluorescent lights in the gym office buzzed overhead as Zariah sat perfectly still, her posture straight, hands folded in her lap. Across the room, Bryce slouched on the padded medical bench, holding an ice pack to his chest. His breathing was still ragged. Pride hurt worse than his body. Coach Holloway paced the small space like a caged animal, his face growing redder by the minute. The veins in his thick neck pulsed as he shot furious glances at Zariah. "What were you thinking?" he finally exploded, stopping in front of her. "You could have seriously injured them." Zariah met his gaze steadily, but remained silent. The office door burst open as two paramedics entered, followed by Mr. Latham, the assistant principal, his tie slightly askew from rushing over. "What's the situation here?" Mr. Latham demanded, looking between Zariah and Bryce. "She attacked us," Bryce's voice cracked. "We were just joking around, and she went crazy." The paramedics moved to check Bryce, lifting his shirt to examine the rapidly forming bruise on his chest. One of them whistled softly. "That's quite an impact point," the paramedic noted. "Clean strike, though. Knew exactly where to hit." Mr. Latham's eyes narrowed at Zariah. "Is this true? Did you attack these students?" "No, sir." Zariah's voice was calm and clear, cutting through the tension. "They cornered me by the bleachers, 3 of them. Bryce slapped my phone away, and Jake grabbed my wrist. I defended myself." "Defended yourself?" Coach Holloway scoffed. "You're trained in martial arts. These boys were just playing around." 3 varsity athletes playing around by surrounding and grabbing a female student? Zariah's tone remained level. "Would you call that playing if it was your daughter?" "Don't you dare!" Coach Holloway started, but Mr. Latham held up a hand. "Miss Bell," he said, his voice dripping with forced patience, "you have to understand how this looks. You're a trained fighter." "Second-degree black belt," Coach Holloway interrupted. "She's basically a weapon." "I'm a student who was cornered and grabbed," Zariah corrected. "My training means I knew how to stop the situation without causing serious harm. Would you prefer I had been helpless?" Bryce winced dramatically as the paramedic pressed near the bruise. "She just snapped. 1 minute we're talking, the next she's attacking everyone. She's unstable." "That's not what the videos show," Zariah said quietly. The room went silent. Mr. Latham's expression tightened. "Videos? At least 15 students were recording. You can see them corner me, see them grab me, see exactly what happened." Coach Holloway's face darkened. "Are you threatening us?" "I'm stating facts," Zariah replied. "I defended myself using appropriate force against 3 larger attackers. It's all documented." Mr. Latham straightened his tie, clearly recalculating. "Nevertheless, this kind of violent response cannot be tolerated at Whitestone. You should have called for help." "Called who?" Zariah's eyes flickered to Coach Holloway. "The teacher who was deliberately looking away?" "Watch yourself, young lady," Coach Holloway growled. The paramedics finished their examination of Bryce. "No serious damage," one reported. "Some bruising, maybe some muscle strain. He should rest for a few days." "See?" Bryce jumped on this. "She could have killed me. She's dangerous." Mr. Latham nodded gravely. "Miss Bell, given the severity of this incident and your advanced combat capabilities, I have no choice but to suspend you for 10 days pending a full investigation." "And Bryce?" Zariah asked. "Mr. McVeigh will be sent home to recover. We'll discuss any necessary disciplinary action after reviewing the situation." Zariah's phone buzzed. The story was already spreading. Social media exploded with different versions of what happened. Some called her a hero for standing up to bullies. Others painted her as a violent threat who needed to be expelled. "I'll need to call your mother," Mr. Latham said, reaching for his phone. "She's already on her way," Zariah replied. "I texted her what happened." The door opened again, and Jake limped in, supported by Todd. Both boys glared at Zariah but kept their distance. "The girl's a menace," Jake muttered. "My wrist is killing me." "You shouldn't have grabbed it," Zariah said simply. Coach Holloway stepped forward, pointing a thick finger at her. You think you're clever, don't you? Think you can come into our school and attack our students? Your students attacked me, Zariah corrected. I stopped them. That's all. Mr. Latham sighed heavily. Miss Bell, please wait outside while we sort this out. And I strongly suggest you consider whether Whitestone is the right place for someone with your particular skill set. Zariah stood, smooth and controlled. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. She noted their reactions, the way the boys tensed, how Coach Holloway shifted his weight backward slightly. Fear dressed up as authority. In the hallway, students gathered in clusters, phones out, watching shaky videos of the fight. They parted as Zariah walked past, their whispers following her. Did you see how fast she moved? My cousin does karate. He said those were professional moves. They better expel her before she hurts someone else. Nah, man. Those guys had it coming. The main office was empty except for the secretary when Zariah arrived. She sat in one of the hard plastic chairs, back straight, waiting. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications. The videos were spreading beyond the school now, reaching local social media groups. 10 minutes later, Denise Bell strode in, still wearing her nurse's scrubs. Her eyes found Zariah immediately, checking for injuries before anything else. Zariah gave a slight nod. She was okay. They sat together in Zariah's car later that evening, reading through the explosion of posts and comments, videos, screenshots, heated debates about whether Zariah was a hero or a menace. The school's Facebook page was flooded with angry parents demanding action, though they couldn't agree on what action they wanted. Denise slammed her phone down on the dashboard. They're gonna paint you as a thug. Zariah's expression hardened as she looked at her mother. Then I'm going to give them a villain they can't beat. The moon cast long shadows across Zariah's backyard as she moved through her forms. Her bare feet gripped the cold grass, each movement precise and controlled. The night air bit at her exposed arms, but she barely noticed. Her mind was clear, focused only on the rhythm of her breathing and the flow of each strike. Punch, block, kick, reset. Her phone buzzed again on the patio table. It hadn't stopped all evening. The video of the fight had exploded across social media, spawning dozens of edited versions, each telling a different story. In some cuts, the beginning was missing. No context of being cornered, just Zariah's swift takedowns. Other versions added sinister music, slow-motion effects, red filters to make it look more violent. Zariah paused her training to check the latest notifications. Bryce had posted a new photo from the emergency room, looking pale and dramatic under the fluorescent lights. The caption read, "This is what happens when unstable people are allowed in our school. Could have killed me. Whitestone strong." The comments section was a war zone. She needs to be locked up. Did you see how many guys jumped her though? Typical thug behavior. Maybe don't grab girls next time? Zariah scrolled through her DMs. The threats were getting more specific. Watch your back walking home. You won't last a week here. Go back where you came from before something bad happens. Mixed in with the racial slurs were Confederate flag emojis and noose images. She screenshot everything, saving it to a folder labeled Evidence. A notification popped up. Harold McVeigh, Bryce's father, had called an emergency school board meeting for tomorrow night. The agenda: discussion of recent violence and safety concerns at Whitestone Academy. Inside the house, Denise was on the phone, her voice tight with controlled anger. No, you listen. My daughter defended herself against 3 attackers. There's video evidence. If you try to expel her, we'll go to the media. Zariah returned to her training, pushing harder now. Each punch carried the weight of the day's anger. Each kick sliced through the tension in her muscles. She had known this was coming. The backlash, the spin, the attempt to make her the villain. They needed her to be the angry black girl who couldn't control herself. the dangerous element that threatened their precious order. A local blog post started circulating. Dangerous and militarized. The truth about Whitestone's violence problem. The article painted Zariah as a trained fighter who had infiltrated the school, waiting for an excuse to attack. It quoted anonymous sources claiming she had threatened other students before. Pure fiction, but the comments ate it up. Zariah moved to her laptop on the patio table. She began organizing her files, the original, unedited videos from 3 different angles, screenshots of previous threats from Bryce and his friends, witness statements from other students who had been harassed, a timeline of every incident, every report filed, every teacher who looked the way. The screen door slid open. Denise stepped out, wrapping her nurse's jacket tighter against the cold. "Baby, you need to come inside. It's freezing out here." "Just finishing up," Zariah replied, throwing one last combination. Denise sat at the patio table, looking at the open laptop screen. "They're really coming for you, aren't they?" "Let them come." Zariah grabbed her water bottle. "I've got receipts for everything." "Zariah," Denise's voice was serious. "These people, they have money, influence. They're connected. If you keep pushing, they're going to hit back harder than some social media posts." "Good." Zariah sat across from her mother. "Let them show everyone who they really are. I didn't teach you to fight so you could go looking for battles." "No," Zariah agreed. "You taught me to fight so I wouldn't have to be afraid of them. And I'm not." Denise reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. "I know that look. You're planning something." "I'm done letting them control the narrative." Zariah turned her laptop around. "Look at all this. The videos, the threats, the cover-ups. They think they can bury it because that's what they've always done. But I'm not going anywhere. They'll try to destroy you," Denise warned. "Your reputation, your future. They can try." Zariah's voice was steel. "But they picked the wrong target." She opened her phone's camera, adjusted the lighting. Perfect stillness, direct eye contact. She typed out her message. "Don't start a fight you can't finish." Her finger hovered over the post button. This wasn't just about today's fight anymore. This was about every student who had been silenced, every incident swept under the rug, every bully protected by money and influence. Post. Within seconds, the notifications began flooding in. Shares, comments, reposts spreading across platforms, some cheering her defiance, others threatening worse consequences. The battle lines were drawn. Denise squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens, I've got your back." "I know, Mom." Zariah closed her laptop. "That's why they're going to lose." She stood, gathering her training gear. The grass was wet with dew now, the moon higher in the sky. Her phone continued to buzz, support, threats, debates raging in the comments, but Zariah felt only calm. They thought they could scare her into submission. They thought their power and privilege would protect them like it always had. They were about to learn otherwise. The morning sun cast harsh shadows through Whitestone Academy's front windows as Zariah pushed through the heavy glass doors. The usual bustle of the front office fell silent. Mrs. Patterson, who had greeted her warmly just days ago, now clutched her coffee mug tighter and averted her eyes. "I'm here to pick up my assignments," Zariah said, her voice steady. The words seemed to echo in the unnatural quiet. Mrs. Patterson nudged another secretary, who shuffled through a stack of papers with trembling hands. A security guard appeared in the doorway, hand resting deliberately on his radio. Zariah noticed how they all maintained a careful distance, like she might explode at any moment. "Here," the secretary said, sliding the papers across the counter instead of handing them directly to her. "Your teachers sent these over." Zariah collected the worksheets, noting how the woman flinched when their fingers almost brushed. "Thank you." Walking through the hallways felt like moving through a museum of fear. Students pressed themselves against lockers, whispers following in her wake. Some pulled out phones to record her, as if expecting a performance. Others hurried in the opposite direction, dragging younger students with them. When she reached her locker, the word "savage" greeted her in thick black letters. The paint was fresh, still glistening under the fluorescent lights. Someone had taken their time with it, making each letter precise and bold. A statement, not a rushed act of vandalism. "I can help clean that up," a quiet voice said behind her. Zariah turned to find Ms. Rhonda, the school's longtime custodian, holding her cleaning cart. The older woman's kind eyes held something more than sympathy. Understanding. "It's okay," Zariah replied. "Let them look at their own handiwork." Ms. Rhonda nodded, then reached into her pocket. With practiced casualness, she slipped a folded note into Zariah's hand while pretending to wipe down the neighboring locker. Zariah tucked it away without looking, understanding the discretion. Through the windows, she could see news vans parked along the street. Reporters stood with microphones, interviewing parents who had shown up to protect their children. Signs bobbed in the morning air. "Keep our kids safe," and "No violence at Whitestone." Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Harold McVeigh was holding an impromptu press conference on the school steps. She watched through the window as he approached the microphones, his face grave with manufactured concern. "As president of the Whitestone Academy School Board, I am announcing an emergency review of our policies regarding students with advanced martial arts training," he declared, his voice carrying through the school's open windows. "While we support self-defense, we must consider the safety implications of having militarized combat techniques present in our educational environment." The reporters leaned forward, hungry for more. "Are you referring to the incident with Zariah Bell?" "We cannot comment on specific students," McVeigh replied smoothly. "But we must ask ourselves, when does self-defense become assault? When does training become a weapon? Our children deserve to feel safe." Zariah's hand tightened around her phone. The narrative was crystal clear now. They weren't going to acknowledge the harassment, the cornering, the threats. Instead, they would transform her into a threat itself. Her training, the very thing that had protected her, would become their evidence against her. In a quiet corner, she finally opened Ms. Rhonda's note. The handwriting was neat and small. "They only fear what they can't control. I've seen this before. Check the 2019 yearbook, page 156. Look for Marisol Ramirez." The bell rang, sending students scurrying to class. Zariah stood alone in the emptying hallway, reading the note again. She had assumed she was the first target, but Ms. Rhonda's message suggested otherwise. How many others had been silenced before her? Through the window, she watched as Harold McVeigh wrapped up his press conference. He was still talking, but she didn't need to hear the words. She recognized the playbook now. Paint her as dangerous. Make her training seem threatening. Turn the victim into the aggressor. Let fear do the rest. But they had made a crucial mistake. They thought fear worked both ways. At home that afternoon, Zariah sat at her desk, surrounded by evidence, screenshots of threats, unedited videos, witness accounts she'd gathered quietly. And now, thanks to Ms. Rhonda's tip, she had a new lead to follow. The 2019 yearbook was already requested from the library. Her laptop glowed in the dimming light as she opened Instagram. With quick, decisive movements, she created a new account. No profile picture, no identifying information, just a simple bio. Truth fears no light. She typed in the username, Alwan Whitestone Leaks. The confirmation email arrived instantly. Zariah stared at the empty profile, understanding what it would mean to take this step. They wanted to control the story. They wanted to paint her as dangerous, unstable, threatening. They wanted her to back down, to be afraid. But Zariah Bell had not been afraid for a very long time. Her finger hovered over the new post button. Once she started this, there would be no going back. They would come at her harder than ever. But that's exactly what she was counting on. Let them show their true faces. Let them reveal who they really were. Every punch thrown in the dark was about to be dragged into the light. Friday morning arrived with a quiet determination. Zariah sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating her face in the pre-dawn darkness. Her finger hovered over the mouse, the unedited video of the fight queued up and ready to post. The clip was crystal clear. It showed everything: Bryce and his friends surrounding her, the deliberate slap that sent her phone flying, the grab at her wrist. Then came her response. Controlled, precise, and completely justified. She added a simple caption. Watch who started it. Watch who's lying. She hit post. Within minutes, notifications started rolling in. Views climbed steadily. 100, 500, 1,000. Comments appeared rapidly. Hold up. This is not what they showed on the news. So McVeigh attacked first. Shocker. They tried to jump her 3-on-1. Zariah watched the numbers climb as she got ready for school. She had a brief meeting scheduled with the administration, supposedly to discuss her return. Her mom had insisted on coming with her. The parking lot was half empty when they arrived. A few early morning students whispered and pointed as Zariah and Denise walked toward the main entrance. The White Stone Leaks post had already reached 5,000 views. Keep your head up, Denise whispered, squeezing her daughter's hand. They headed to Zariah's locker first to collect some books she needed. The hallway smelled wrong before they even turned the corner, a sickly, sweet odor that made Zariah's stomach turn. Her locker door hung slightly open, brown liquid seeping from the bottom. When she pulled it open, the damage was immediately apparent. Every textbook was soaked in what looked like cola, pages warped and sticking together. Her notebooks were ruined, ink bleeding through soggy paper. But it was the photo taped to the inside of the door that made Denise gasp. Someone had taken Zariah's yearbook photo and edited it onto a mugshot template. Below it, in bold red letters, "Arrest this animal." "Oh, hell no," Denise breathed, pulling out her phone to document everything. "This is a hate crime." Zariah stood very still, cataloging every detail. The systematic destruction of her books. The careful editing of the photo. This wasn't a random act. This was methodical intimidation. They marched straight to the principal's office. Mr. Latham was already there, along with the assistant principal and the school's resource officer. They looked uncomfortable as Denise slapped the photos she'd just taken onto the desk. "This is what's happening to my daughter," Denise said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "This is what you're allowing in your school." Mr. Latham cleared his throat. "Mrs. Bell, we understand your concern." "Do you?" Denise cut him off. "Because it looks like you're letting my daughter be terrorized while you protect the boy who attacked her." "The situation is complex," the assistant principal offered weakly. "It's really not," Zariah spoke up. "Bryce attacked me. I defended myself. Now his friends are vandalizing my property and making racist threats. What's complex about that?" Mr. Latham leaned forward, folding his hands on his desk. "Zariah, if I may, this situation has become inflamed largely because of social media attention. If you would simply stay quiet about the incident, let things die down naturally." "Are you serious?" Denise interrupted. "You want her to be silent while they threaten her?" "Mrs. Bell," the resource officer stepped in, "we're just suggesting that additional publicity might escalate tensions." "The truth escalates nothing," Zariah said firmly. "The video shows exactly what happened. If that makes some people uncomfortable, Maybe they should ask themselves why. Mr. Latham's expression hardened slightly. Social media is inflammatory. If your daughter stays quiet, this might die down. The meaning was clear. They weren't neutral observers. They were active participants in the cover-up. "We'll be filing a formal complaint with the school board," Denise announced, standing up. "And the Department of Education?" "Mrs. Bell," Mr. Latham said, "let's not be hasty." "My daughter's safety isn't something I'm hasty about," Denise replied. "Come on, Zariah." They left the office as the administrators called after them with hollow assurances about looking into the incident. Zariah checked her phone. The video had passed 10,000 views. The day dragged on with tense meetings and phone calls. Denise documented everything, filed police reports, contacted lawyers. Zariah monitored the growing response to her post. Support was building. Other students were starting to speak up, sharing their own stories of harassment. It was after sunset when they finally headed home. Zariah was exhausted, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. They pulled into their driveway, and Denise hit the garage door opener. As the door lifted, the overhead light flickered on, revealing fresh damage. Scratched deep into the driver's side door of her mom's car were 2 words. "Gone yet?" Denise's hands tightened on the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. Zariah stared at the jagged letters, understanding with perfect clarity that this wasn't just about the fight anymore. This was about power, about control, about making her disappear. They thought they could scare her into silence. They thought property damage and threats would make her back down. They thought they knew what she was capable of. They were wrong on every count. Zariah sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by yearbooks from the past 3 years. Her laptop balanced on her knee as she scrolled through archived posts about Whitestone Academy. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across her room, but she barely noticed the passing hours. Something wasn't adding up. Bryce's pattern of behavior was too confident, too practiced. People like him didn't just wake up one day and decide to become monsters. They evolved, testing boundaries, seeing what they could get away with. "There have to be others," she muttered, flipping through the 2022 yearbook again. Her eyes caught on the senior portraits. So many faces. So many potential stories. Who else had Bryce targeted? Who else had the school protected? Her phone buzzed. Another notification from Whitestone Leaks. The unedited fight video had reached 50,000 views. Comments poured in hourly now, many from current and former students sharing their own experiences with bullying at Whitestone. But none mentioned Bryce specifically. The fear of retaliation was still too strong. Zariah opened a new tab and typed Whitestone Academy Incidents 2022 into the search bar. She scrolled past the usual sports headlines and honor roll announcements until something caught her eye. A small article in the local paper from March last year. Local student withdraws after alleged incident at Whitestone Academy. The article was brief, maddeningly vague. A student named Marisol Vega had left the school mid-semester following what the administration called a misunderstanding. No details were provided. The school's spokesman had offered a generic statement about prioritizing student safety. "Misunderstanding," Zariah repeated, her voice hard. That's what they'd called Bryce attacking her, too. She searched for Marisol Vega on social media. Most accounts were locked down tight, but an old Instagram profile appeared. The most recent post was from exactly 1 year ago, a blurry photo taken in what looked like the school hallway. Zariah leaned closer, studying the image. Though distorted, she could make out a male figure looming behind a girl at her locker. The threatening body language was unmistakable. The caption read, "Believe girls, even when they whisper." Zariah's heart began to pound. She recognized that broad-shouldered silhouette, the entitled stance. She'd faced it herself in the gym. Bryce, she whispered. Her bedroom door creaked open. Denise stood there, concern etched on her tired face. Baby, you've been at this for hours. Maybe take a break? Mom, look at this. Zoraya turned her laptop screen. This girl, Marisol, something happened to her last year. Something they covered up. Denise sat on the edge of the bed, studying the photo. You think it was the same boy? I know it was. Zoraya pulled up side-by-side images. Bryce's yearbook photo next to the blurred figure. Same build, same height, same way of standing over someone. Zoraya. Denise's voice was gentle but worried. I know you want justice. But these people, they're dangerous. They've already vandalized my car, threatened you. Maybe we should focus on keeping you safe. Let the lawyers handle the rest. This isn't just about me anymore. Zoraya gestured at her research. Look how many people are speaking up now. Everyone has a story about bullying at Whitestone, but they're all too scared to name names. What happened to Marisol? That could have been me. That could be the next girl Bryce decides to target. Which is exactly why I'm worried, Denise insisted. The more you dig, the harder they'll push back. I taught you to defend yourself, but I never wanted you to have to fight a war. Zoraya met her mother's eyes. You also taught me to stand up for what's right. Remember what you always said? If not you, then who? Denise sighed, a mix of pride and fear crossing her face. I did say that, didn't I? They're counting on everyone being too afraid to speak up. That's how they maintain control. Zoraya turned back to her laptop, opening the Whitestone Leaks account. But what if we gave people a safe way to tell their stories? What if we showed them they're not alone? She began composing a direct message to Marisol's old account. I know what happened at Whitestone wasn't a misunderstanding. I'm fighting the same battle now. Your post said to believe girls when they whisper. I want to help make those whispers into shouts. If you're willing to talk, you're not alone anymore. Denise watched her daughter type, then stood and kissed the top of her head. Just promise me you'll be careful. These people have money and influence. I promise. Zoraya hit send on the message. But I won't back down. Not when I know there are others out there who weren't as lucky as me, who didn't have a mom who taught them how to fight back. Hours passed as Zoraya continued her research, documenting patterns, saving screenshots. The sun had set when her phone finally lit up with a notification. A response from Marisol. I'll talk, but not over text. Zoraya sat up straighter, her pulse quickening. This was it, the first crack in Whitestone's wall of silence, the first witness willing to speak up. She knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever Marisol had to say would change everything. The Sunday morning air was crisp as Zoraya and Denise drove their freshly washed car out of town. Someone had tried scrubbing off the scratched threat, but faint marks still showed through the paint. Zoraya stared at passing fields, rehearsing questions in her mind. You sure about this place? Denise asked, checking the GPS. Seems pretty far out. That's the point, Zoraya said. Marisol picked it because it's away from Whitestone. She doesn't want anyone seeing her talk to me. They pulled into a small strip mall parking lot. The coffee shop, Bean There, sat between a laundromat and a dollar store. Through the window, Zoraya spotted a girl sitting alone in the back corner, hood pulled low over her face. Want me to come in? Denise asked. Zoraya shook her head. She might not open up with someone else there. But stay close. I'll be right outside in the car, baby. Just signal if you need me. Inside, the shop smelled of coffee and cinnamon rolls. Only a few other customers sat scattered at tables, none paying attention. Zoraya walked straight to the back corner. Marisol Vega looked up, pushing her hood back slightly. She was pretty, with long dark hair and delicate features. But something in her eyes seemed haunted. Her hands trembled as she gripped her coffee cup. Thank you for meeting me, Zariah said softly, sliding into the seat across from her. I almost didn't come, Marisol admitted. Her voice was barely above a whisper. But when I saw that video of you fighting back, I couldn't stop thinking about it, about what I should have done differently. Whatever happened wasn't your fault, Zariah said firmly. She placed her phone on the table, audio recorder ready. Can I record this? You can stay anonymous if you want. Marisol nodded. No, use my name. I'm done hiding. She took a shaky breath. It started small. Comments about my body in the hallway. Jokes about whether I was legal. Bryce would brush against me between classes, corner me at my locker. His friends would laugh. Did you report it? Multiple times. The counselor said I was misinterpreting cultural differences. Like somehow being Latina meant I didn't understand what harassment was. Marisol's voice cracked. Then came the party. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking as she opened old messages. Bryce had been drinking. He followed me upstairs, pushed me into a bedroom. I fought back, scratched his face. But he was so much bigger. She swallowed hard. Someone heard me screaming and pulled him off. But the next day, he claimed I attacked him first. Zariah felt sick, but kept her voice steady. What did the school do? His father, Harold McVeigh, called me into his office, said if I kept spreading lies about his son, they'd make sure I regretted it. Marisol's eyes filled with tears. A week later, they expelled me for academic dishonesty, claimed I cheated on a test. It wasn't true, but it didn't matter. They had all the power. She handed Zariah her phone. I saved everything. The threatening texts from Bryce, photos of the scratches he left on my arms, even a voicemail from Harold McVeigh warning me to stay quiet for my own good. Zariah's fingers tightened around the phone as she scrolled through the evidence. Messages from Bryce ranged from sexually explicit to violently threatening. Photos showed bruises on Marisol's wrists, her torn shirt from the party. The voicemail from Harold was coldly professional, but dripping with menace. Why didn't you go to the police? Zariah asked gently. The McVeighs own half this town. Harold's brother is the police chief. Marisol wiped her eyes. My parents wanted to fight it, but we couldn't afford lawyers. And after what happened to the last girl who accused Bryce, there were others. At least 2 that I know of. Both transferred out suddenly. No one ever talked about why. Marisol leaned forward. That's why I had to meet you. You're the first person who stood up to him and actually hurt him back. They can't just make you disappear. Zariah started copying the files to her phone. I'm going to make sure everyone sees this. But are you sure you want me using your name? They might come after you again. I don't care anymore. Steel crept into Marisol's voice. I've spent the last year having nightmares, feeling worthless, wondering if it was somehow my fault. But watching you fight back, it woke something up in me. Use my name. Use my face. I want them to know they didn't break me. They talked for another hour, Zariah recording everything. Marisol described the systematic way the McVeighs buried complaints, how teachers looked the other way, how Bryce's violence escalated because he knew he was untouchable. When they finally finished, Marisol hugged Zariah fiercely. Make them pay, she whispered. Back home that night, Zariah sat at her desk, carefully editing the footage. She spliced together Marisol's testimony with the saved evidence, text screenshots, photos of injuries, that damning voicemail from Harold McVeigh. She added news clips about the other girls who'd transferred, social media posts showing Bryce's pattern of harassment, and finally, the uncut video of their fight in the gym. The final product was devastating, not just to Bryce, but to the entire system that protected him. Zariah scheduled it to post on A Whitestone Leaks the next morning, at exactly 7:45 a.m. right when first period started. Her finger hovered over the upload button. Everything had to be perfect. The timing, the tags, the backup copies saved in multiple places. She wouldn't get a second chance at this. As the file processed, Zariah whispered, "No one's covering for him this time." The halls of Whitestone Academy buzzed with typical Monday morning chaos when the first notifications started pinging. At exactly 8 a.m., Art Whitestone Leaks posted, "The truth about Bryce McVeigh, a pattern of violence and cover-ups." Within minutes, phones lit up everywhere. Students huddled in groups, heads bent over screens, watching Marisol's tearful testimony. The hallways fell eerily quiet, except for scattered gasps and whispers. "Oh my God. Is that Marisol? I remember when she left. Look at those bruises." His dad actually said that? By second period, the video had over 10,000 views. Local news stations started calling the school. Harold McVeigh's voicemail threatening Marisol played in crystal-clear audio, impossible to deny. Screenshots of Bryce's violent texts filled Twitter feeds. Photos of injuries sparked outrage across Facebook parent groups. Zariah sat in her regular spot at the library, suspended but allowed on campus for a disciplinary meeting. She watched the view counter climb, her heart pounding with each refresh. Ms. Rhonda walked past, pushing her cleaning cart, and gave a subtle but clear thumbs up. Her small smile said everything. You did it. By lunch, Whitestone Truth was trending locally. Students who normally sat with Bryce found other tables. He stormed through the cafeteria alone, face red, phone pressed to his ear. No one met his eyes. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Parents held signs reading, "Protect our kids," and "No more cover-ups." A local news van parked across the street, camera pointed at the school entrance. Principal Warner rushed out to handle damage control, but his practiced smile looked strained. Denise texted Zariah throughout the day. "Baby, you see the news? Channel 5 just called asking for comment. Got an email from Lisa Martinez, civil rights attorney. Wants to represent us pro bono. You doing okay? Need me to pick you up early?" Zariah replied, "I'm good, Mom. Let them sweat." The afternoon brought more fallout. Bryce's Instagram disappeared completely. Harold McVeigh's secretary announced he was out of office indefinitely. The school board called an emergency meeting for Wednesday. In the administrative office, voices raised behind closed doors. "This is a PR nightmare. We need to get ahead of this. Those files were confidential. The liability alone." Students who had ignored or mocked Zariah now looked at her differently. Not with fear like before, but with something closer to respect. A few even approached to apologize. "I had no idea about Marisol. We should have said something. What they did to you wasn't right." By dismissal, the protest outside had grown. More news vans arrived. Parents demanded answers. The truth was spreading like wildfire, burning through years of carefully maintained lies. Zariah's phone buzzed with messages of support. "Marisol, you did it. Thank you. I feel like I can breathe again." "Ms. Rhonda, proud of you, baby girl. Stay strong." Anonymous students, "We believe you. Never knew how bad it was. What can we do to help?" The civil rights attorney's email was detailed and passionate. "Dear Ms. Bell, what happened to you and others at Whitestone Academy represents a clear pattern of discrimination, harassment, and institutional negligence. Your courage in exposing this deserves justice. I would be honored to represent you pro bono." For the first time since the initial fight, Zariah felt her shoulders relax. The weight she'd been carrying started to lift. It wasn't over, not by far, but something had shifted. The truth was finally heavier than their power. She walked to her mom's car that afternoon with her head high. Students nodded as she passed. Even teachers who had looked away before met her eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by quiet determination. "You okay?" Denise asked, as Zariah got in. "Yeah," Zariah smiled. "Really okay." They drove home in comfortable silence, watching the protest signs shrink in the rearview mirror. The late afternoon sun felt warmer somehow, cleaner. At home, Zariah worked on homework while news alerts kept buzzing. More former students were coming forward, parents were organizing, the school board was facing mounting pressure. Then, at 9:47 p.m., a text from an unknown number. "Let's call a truce. Just you and me. Tomorrow. Gym. After school. No one else." Zariah recognized Bryce's number. She stared at the message, remembering Marisol's tears, the scratches on her mother's car, every moment of fear and fury since she'd arrived at Whitestone. The screen glowed in the darkness of her room, waiting for an answer. The empty gym loomed before Zariah as she pushed through the heavy metal doors. Her footsteps echoed across the polished wooden floor, each step deliberate and measured. The recording app on her phone blinked silently in her jacket pocket, capturing every sound. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the high windows, casting long shadows across the basketball court. The space felt different now, hollow and threatening. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead, creating an unsteady rhythm of light and shadow. Zariah positioned herself near the center court line, maintaining clear sight lines to all exits. Her muscles were coiled tight, ready. The air felt thick with anticipation. The main door creaked open. Bryce stepped in, still wearing his Letterman jacket despite being off the team. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by something harder, colder. His knuckles were white around the strap of his gym bag. "Didn't think you'd actually show," he said, voice echoing. "I'm not afraid of you, Bryce." Zariah kept her voice steady, watching his every movement. A metallic screech cut through the air. The side door by the bleachers swung open. Two more figures entered, Jake Martinez and Trevor Wells, both football players, both built like tanks. They spread out, forming a triangle around her. Zariah's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't a peace talk. It was an ambush. "You really thought you could just mess with my life?" Bryce's voice cracked with rage. "Post all that stuff online? Make everyone turn against me?" "You did that yourself," Zariah said, shifting her stance. "I just showed people who you really are." Jake lunged first, telegraphing his move with a grunt. Zariah pivoted, driving her elbow into his solar plexus. He stumbled back, wheezing. Trevor charged from behind. She dropped and swept his legs, sending him crashing to the floor. But they were bigger, and there were three of them. As she spun to face Bryce, Jake recovered and grabbed her arm. She broke free with a practiced wrist lock, but Trevor was up again, rushing her. The fight moved in brutal snapshots. An elbow to Trevor's jaw, Jake's fist grazing her temple, her knee driving up into someone's stomach, Bryce's hands reaching for her throat. She fought with everything she had, every technique, every counter, every dirty trick she'd learned. But they kept coming. 3-on-1 wasn't a fight. It was a beating. Trevor caught her with a tackle that slammed her against the hardwood floor. Her knee twisted with a sickening pop. Pain shot up her leg like lightning. She rolled, trying to create distance, but Jake was there, raining down punches. Blood sprayed across the floor as one connected with her nose. The coppery taste filled her mouth. Her vision blurred. Bryce reached into her jacket and yanked out her phone. Looking for evidence? He smashed it against the ground, screen shattering. "Not this time!" Zariah kept swinging, landing solid hits even from the ground. But her ankle wouldn't hold her weight. Each movement sent fresh waves of agony through her leg. Their advantages were too many. Size, numbers, ruthlessness. The gym's hollow acoustics amplified every impact. The wet smack of fists on flesh, her labored breathing, their angry grunts, the squeak of sneakers on polished wood. No witty comebacks now. No clever techniques. Just pure survival instinct as she fought to stay conscious. She managed to crack Trevor's nose with her forearm, buying precious seconds. Blood ran down his face as he staggered back. Jake hesitated, creating a gap. Zariah seized the moment. She rolled, ignoring the screaming pain in her knee, and scrambled toward the back exit. Her fingers left bloody streaks on the floor. "Let her go," Bryce called out, breathing hard. She got the message. The emergency door felt a mile away. Each movement was agony. But Zariah kept crawling, dragging herself forward inch by inch. Her vision tunneled, darkness creeping in at the edges. Finally, her hand found the push bar. She heaved herself up just enough to stumble through. The door swung shut behind her with a hollow boom. The setting sun painted the parking lot in shades of orange and red. Zariah collapsed against the brick wall, chest heaving. Blood dripped steadily from her nose, spattering her shirt. Her left eye was already swelling shut. Every breath sent daggers through her ribs. She tried to stand, but her knee buckled. Her ankle wouldn't bear weight. The world spun sickeningly. No phone to call for help. No witnesses to what happened inside. Just the empty lot, the dying sun, and her own ragged breathing. A sob caught in her throat, but she choked it back. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Not now. Not ever. The gym door remained closed. No one followed. No one came to help. The only sounds were distant traffic and the soft whisper of wind through the trees. Zariah pressed her sleeve against her bleeding nose, wincing at the contact. Her fingerprints were smeared with red. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind waves of pain and nausea. She looked up at the darkening sky, tasting blood and defeat. The truth hadn't been enough. The exposure hadn't stopped them. They'd just gotten smarter about their violence. The security cameras that might have caught something were conveniently pointed away. The few teachers still in the building were too far to hear. The parking lot was deserted. They'd planned it perfectly. 3-on-1 in an empty gym after hours. No evidence, no witnesses, just her word against theirs. And they'd already painted her as the violent one. The morning light filtering through Zariah's bedroom window felt like needles in her eyes. She tried to sit up, but gasped as pain shot through her ribs. Her reflection in the mirror stopped her cold. Her left eye was swollen nearly shut, a dark purple mass spreading across her cheekbone. Her split lip had crusted over with dried blood. Denise burst into the room, already in her nursing scrubs. "That's it. We're going to the police right now." She grabbed her car keys from the dresser, hands shaking with rage. "Look what they did to you! This is assault! This is a hate crime!" Zariah shook her head carefully, wincing at the movement. "They destroyed my phone, Mom." The security cameras were turned away. "It's 3 white boys' word against mine." She touched her swollen eye gently. "You know how this plays out. So we just let them get away with it?" Denise's voice cracked. "Baby, they could have killed you. I'm not letting them get away with anything." Zariah slowly pulled on her loosest hoodie, biting back a groan as she raised her arms. "But we have to be smart. Running to the police with no evidence just gives them more power." "You can barely walk," Denise gestured at Zariah's knee, now wrapped in an elastic bandage. "What's your plan? More martial arts against 3 boys twice your size?" "No." Zariah grabbed her crutches, testing her weight. "Something better. Ms. Rhonda told me something last week about the security cameras. Not all of them were broken." Denise followed her daughter down the stairs, hovering close in case she stumbled. "The janitor? What does she have to do with this?" "She sees everything, Mom. She's worked there 20 years, and she hates what they do to kids like me and Marisol. Zariah paused at the bottom of the stairs, catching her breath. I need to talk to her. You're not going back to that school today. Denise blocked the front door. You need a doctor, X-rays. After. Zariah met her mother's eyes. Please, Mom. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. The drive to school was tense. Denise kept glancing at her daughter's bruised face, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Students stared as Zariah limped through the parking lot on her crutches. Some whispered. Others quickly looked away. The halls were mostly empty during fifth period when Zariah made her way to the maintenance office. Her ribs screamed with each step, but she kept moving. Ms. Rhonda was organizing supplies when Zariah knocked softly. The older woman's eyes widened at Zariah's injuries. She quickly ushered her inside, closing the door. Oh, child, what did they do to you? The gym. Yesterday after school? Zariah lowered herself carefully into a chair. You mentioned some cameras still work? Ms. Rhonda wrung her hands, glancing nervously at the door. The storage hallway camera. It catches the side of the gym. Has motion sensors. She lowered her voice. Files backup to an old hard drive. Administration forgot about it years ago. Can you show me? Ms. Rhonda hesitated. I could lose my job. They could hurt someone else. Zariah touched her swollen eye. They won't stop, Ms. Rhonda. Not unless someone stops them. The janitor's weathered face hardened with resolve. She pulled a small key from her pocket. Storage room B, third shelf, behind the cleaning supplies. Black box marked 2019. Password is mop1234. She pressed the key into Zariah's hand. I'm going on my lunch break now. For exactly 30 minutes. Zariah squeezed the older woman's hand. Thank you. The storage room was dim and musty. Zariah found the hard drive exactly where Ms. Rhonda said it would be. Her hands trembled as she connected it to her laptop. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. 3 figures surrounding one. The violence played out in stark black and white. Every punch, every kick, every moment they thought no one could see. She copied the files quickly, heart pounding. Then she began to edit, splicing in Marisol's tearful interview, screenshots of Bryce's threatening texts, the social media posts calling her unstable and violent. The truth, finally, in undeniable digital form. Back home, she refined the video until late into the night. Her body ached, but her mind was razor-sharp. She added text overlays explaining each clip, music that built to a crescendo, every detail designed for maximum impact. The homecoming pep rally was Friday. The entire school would be there. Parents, local media, the perfect audience. She scheduled the video to post exactly when the cheerleaders would finish their routine. It would go live on every platform simultaneously: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. No way to contain it. No way to spin it. Denise found her still working at 2 a.m., ice pack pressed to her ribs. Baby, you need to rest, she said softly. Almost done. Zariah's good eye was bloodshot from staring at the screen. Just need to make sure everything's perfect. Denise sat beside her daughter, gently touching one of the bruises on her arm. I'm so sorry this happened to you. That I couldn't protect you from it. You did protect me, Mom. Zariah saved the final file. You taught me to fight back. Not just with my fists. With my mind. With the truth. She closed her laptop and looked in the mirror above her desk. Her reflection was a mess of purple bruises and swelling, but her good eye burned with determination. They thought violence would silence her. Instead, it had given her exactly what she needed. Proof of their true nature, caught on camera. She carefully wrapped fresh tape around her ribs, adjusted her knee brace, and took a slow breath. The pain was still there, but it didn't matter anymore. Pain fades. evidence. Doesn't. They wanted a fight? She whispered to her reflection. They'll get one. Friday night blazed with artificial sunlight at Whitestone Academy's stadium. The bleachers groaned under the weight of nearly 2,000 people. Students, parents, staff, and local media packed shoulder to shoulder for the homecoming pep rally. Signs waved. Phones flashed. The marching band's drums echoed across the field. Bryce McVeigh stood at the 50-yard line, his Letterman jacket crisp and new. His bruises from the gym fight had faded, leaving only a faint yellowish tinge beneath his right eye. He grinned and waved as the crowd chanted his name. Several college scouts sat in the VIP section, notepads ready. The cheerleaders bounced onto the field in their red and white uniforms, pom-poms shaking. Their routine began with practiced precision. Flips, splits, pyramids building higher and higher. Coach Holloway beamed from the sidelines, already imagining the headlines about his star quarterback's triumphant return. Go! Fight! Win! The cheer squad's voices rang out in perfect unison. Whitestone Warriors never give in! The massive jumbotron screen above the field displayed their movements in crystal clarity. Hundreds of phones recorded, live streaming the event across social media. This was Whitestone's moment to shine, to show the world they were more than just some small-town school. Then, the screen flickered. At first, it seemed like simple technical difficulties. The image stuttered, froze for a split second. The cheerleaders' routine continued below, but something was wrong with the feed. The stadium speakers crackled with static. The screen went black. When it came back on, the footage was different. Grainy, black and white. Security camera footage from a familiar hallway. The crowd's excited murmur turned confused. On screen, 3 figures surrounded a 4th near the gym doors. Someone gasped as they recognized Bryce's distinctive stance, his Letterman jacket. The audio kicked in, tinny but clear. You think that little video's gonna hurt me? Bryce's voice sneered. No one's gonna believe you, bitch. The violence that followed was brutal and undeniable. The security footage caught every moment. Bryce and his friends attacking Zariah, her desperate defense, the savage kicks when she fell. Blood spattering the floor. Her phone being smashed. Her broken crawl toward the exit. Screams erupted from the bleachers. Parents covered their children's eyes. The cheerleaders stopped mid-routine, staring up in horror. Staff members rushed toward the control booth, but the video kept playing. New footage appeared, earlier clips of Bryce harassing other students, screenshots of threatening texts. Marisol Vega's tear-stained face as she described her assault. Document after document showing complaints buried, victims silenced. The McVeigh family's influence keeping it all quiet. Through the chaos, a lone figure appeared at the far end of the field. Zariah Bell walked slowly toward midfield, each step measured and deliberate, despite her obvious limp. Her face was still bruised, her eyes swollen, but her expression was carved from stone. She wore simple black workout clothes, no padding, no protection. The crowd fell silent as she approached. Even the frantic staff members stopped trying to kill the video feed. All eyes shifted between the damning footage above and the living proof of it walking across their pristine field. Bryce spun to face her, his handsome features twisted with rage. His carefully maintained image was crumbling with every second the video played. College scouts were already packing their bags. Parents were pulling out their phones, not to record, but to call lawyers. "You think you won?" he snarled, loud enough for the nearest rows to hear. "You think this changes anything? This is my school, my town. You're nothing here." Zariah stopped 20 feet away. With deliberate slowness, she shrugged off her light jacket and let it fall to the grass. Her arms were mapped with bruises, but her stance was solid, balanced. ready. "I'm not here to win," she said, her voice carrying across the sudden stillness. "I'm here to bury you." The stadium lights cast harsh shadows across the field as predator and prey faced each other. But this time, the roles were reversed. This time, everyone could see the truth. The Golden Boy's tarnished spirit, the supposed thug's righteous strength. Above them, the video continued its relentless exposure. Years of cruelty, countless victims. A system of privilege and protection finally laid bare beneath the Friday night lights. Bryce's fingers curled into fists. His father was somewhere in the stands, watching his carefully constructed dynasty collapse. His future was evaporating with every new revelation on that massive screen. Zariah simply waited, her body still but alert. She had no more need for hidden cameras or careful plans. The truth was out there now, impossible to ignore or suppress. All that remained was this moment, this final, public reckoning beneath the eyes of their entire world. The cheerleaders huddled together, their pristine uniforms a sharp contrast to the ugly reality playing out before them. The marching band stood frozen, instruments lowered. Even the night air seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. In the sudden quiet, you could hear Bryce's ragged breathing, see the desperate calculation in his eyes as he realized there was no walking away from this. His perfectly managed reputation was in tatters. His father's influence couldn't erase what everyone was witnessing. Zariah's voice cut through the tension once more. "I'm here to bury you." The words hung in the air like a promise, not of violence, but of justice. Not of revenge, but of consequences finally, irrevocably delivered. The stadium erupted in chaos as Bryce charged across the grass, his feet pounding against the turf. His face was contorted with rage, all pretense of civility abandoned. The crowd surged forward in their seats, phones raised high, capturing every moment of what was about to unfold. No security guards moved to stop it. No teachers stepped forward. Even Coach Holloway stood frozen, his whistle hanging useless around his neck. This was beyond rules now, beyond authority. This was raw fury meeting cold determination under the merciless stadium lights. Bryce's first attack was pure emotion. A football player's shoulder ram meant to knock Zariah off her feet. She saw it coming, read the telegraphed movement in his tensed muscles and wild eyes. Instead of dodging, she shifted her weight and absorbed the impact, using his own momentum to twist away from the worst of it. The movement was fluid, practiced, but pain still shot through her injured knee. As Bryce's shoulder met her body, Zariah rolled with the force. In the same motion, she drove her elbow up and into his jaw, a precise strike that made his teeth clack together. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. He stumbled backward, more surprised than hurt. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. 100 camera flashes captured the moment. Zariah didn't pause. She pivoted on her good leg, executing a textbook sweep aimed at Bryce's ankles. But he'd been watching her fight before. He expected it. His hand shot out and grabbed her injured knee, fingers digging into the tender joint. White-hot agony exploded through her leg. Her stance crumbled. She hit the grass hard, the impact driving air from her lungs. For a terrible moment, the world spun. Bryce was on her before she could recover. His weight pressed her into the ground as he straddled her, his knees pinning her arms. His fists came down like hammers, wild, brutal strikes fueled by humiliation and hate. One caught her cheek. Another glanced off her shoulder. Blood filled Zariah's mouth. The stadium lights blurred above her. But through the pain, through the crushing pressure, her training took over. This was no different from countless sparring matches, no different from years of practicing worst-case scenarios. She tucked her chin and snapped her head up, catching Bryce square in the face with a devastating headbutt. The crack of impact echoed across the field. He reeled back, clutching his nose, his grip loosening. That split second was all she needed. Zoraya's hips shifted, her body remembering the movements she'd drilled thousands of times since she was 12. She hooked her leg around Bryce's waist and twisted hard, using his own weight against him. The hip throw was textbook perfect. He went flying, landing hard on his back, with a dull thud that made the crowd flinch. Absolute silence fell over the stadium. Even the video playing overhead seemed muted. Everyone watched, transfixed, as Bryce rolled onto his side, blood streaming from his nose. His perfect white uniform was stained with grass and red spatters. Two of his teammates broke from the sidelines, rushing toward them. But Coach Holloway's voice cut through the quiet like a whip. "Don't touch her," he bellowed. "There are too many cameras. Stand down." The boys hesitated. In that moment of uncertainty, Zoraya moved. Her spinning back kick caught the first boy in the sternum, a perfectly executed strike that lifted him off his feet. He crashed into his friend, and both went down in a tangle of limbs. Neither got back up immediately. Zoraya stood in the center of the field, her chest heaving. Blood trickled from her split lip. Her knee screamed with every movement, but her stance remained solid, her guard up and ready. Across from her, Bryce pushed himself to his feet. His face was a mess of blood and fury. His Letterman jacket was torn at the shoulder. Everything he'd built, his reputation, his future, his power, was crumbling around him. And still, he wouldn't stay down. "You're dead," he spat, blood and saliva staining the grass. "You hear me? You're fucking dead." Zoraya wiped her lip with the back of her hand. Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, her voice came out steady and clear. "You had your shot," she said. "Now it's mine." The stadium lights cast harsh shadows across their faces. Predator and prey, bully and victim, power and justice locked in their final confrontation. The massive screen above still played its damning evidence, but no one was watching it anymore. All eyes were fixed on the two fighters, waiting to see how this would end. Bryce's hands clenched into fists. His shoulders bunched, ready to charge again. The last fragments of his carefully constructed mask had shattered, revealing the raw violence beneath. He was no longer the golden boy, the star quarterback, the untouchable king of Whitestone Academy. He was just an angry, frightened boy who'd finally met someone he couldn't break. Zoraya's stance shifted slightly, adjusting for her injured knee. Her breathing was controlled, measured, the result of years of training and discipline. She had spent her whole life preparing for moments like this, learning to face down bigger, stronger opponents who thought they could hurt her without consequences. The night air crackled with tension. Phones recorded. Witnesses held their breath. And in the center of it all, two fighters faced each other beneath the unforgiving lights, ready to finish what began with a simple act of bullying on that first day of school. The two fighters circled each other under the harsh stadium lights, their shadows stretching long across the grass. The crowd's roar had faded to a low hum of tension. Bryce moved with predatory focus, his earlier rage replaced by something colder, more calculated. Blood still dripped from his nose, but his eyes were sharp, tracking Zoraya's every movement. Zoraya's knee throbbed with each step. Sweat mixed with blood on her face, and her ribs screamed where Bryce's earlier blows had landed. But she kept her guard up, her breathing steady, watching for tells in his stance. He shifted left, shoulders tensing. Zoraya recognized the feint. She'd seen it in countless sparring matches. But knowing it was coming didn't make it easier to defend against, not with her injuries slowing her down. Bryce's fake left, turned into a sudden drop and lunge. He went low, aiming for her injured knee. Zariah brought her arms down to block, but the movement sent lightning bolts of pain through her bruised ribs. Her defense was a fraction too slow. His fist drove deep into her stomach, just below her solar plexus. The air rushed from her lungs. She stumbled backward, fighting to stay upright, as black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Her knee buckled. Bryce pressed his advantage. His hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her throat. The grip was crushing, professional. Not the wild choking of an amateur, but the calculated squeeze of someone who knew exactly how to hurt someone. The pressure on her windpipe triggered something deep and primal in Zariah's mind. Suddenly, she wasn't on the football field anymore. She was 8 years old again, pinned against a wall by larger hands, her father's hands, as he screamed about respect and obedience. The same terror, the same helplessness threatened to overwhelm her. But she wasn't that scared little girl anymore. Years of training took over. Her body moved on pure muscle memory, fueled by survival instinct and countless hours of practice. Her palm shot up, the heel of her hand catching Bryce's ear with devastating precision. The impact disrupted his equilibrium, making him release her throat and stagger sideways. She didn't give him time to recover. Her elbow came up in a brutal uppercut, catching him under the chin. His head snapped back, eyes going wide with shock. Blood sprayed from his already damaged nose. The world seemed to slow down as Zariah pivoted on her good leg. Every hour of training, every bruise earned in the dojo, every lesson learned through pain and persistence, it all led to this moment. Her body turned, generating power from her core despite the screaming agony in her ribs. Her heel whipped around in a perfect arc. The spinning heel kick caught Bryce directly in the temple. The impact made a sound like a bat hitting a melon. For a split second, he stood frozen, eyes unfocused. Then his knees buckled. Bryce McVeigh, star quarterback and golden boy of Whitestone Academy, fell face first into the muddy grass. He didn't try to break his fall. He didn't make a sound. He just dropped, unconscious, before he hit the ground. The stadium was absolutely silent. No one cheered. No one booed. 2,000 people held their breath, phones still recording, as they tried to process what they'd just witnessed. The mighty had fallen, and the fall had been brutal. Zariah stood over Bryce's crumpled form, her chest heaving with exertion. Her whole body trembled with adrenaline and pain. Blood dripped steadily from her split lip. Her knee felt like it was on fire, but her stance remained solid, her balance perfect, just as her mother had taught her all those years ago. Coach Holloway rushed forward with the medical team, kneeling beside his fallen star player. Phones flashed. Whispers began to spread through the crowd. Someone started to clap, but the sound died quickly, swallowed by the heavy silence. Zariah turned slowly, deliberately, to face the sea of cameras that had captured everything. Her eyes blazed with a fierce intensity that made several people step back. Blood and sweat streaked her face, but her voice rang out clear and strong across the field. "You don't silence me," she declared, each word precise and powerful. "You expose yourselves." The words echoed through the stadium's sound system, picked up by the microphones that had been set up for the rally. Above, on the massive screen, the footage of Bryce's earlier attack still played in an endless loop, the past and present colliding in a moment of perfect clarity. Members of the school board stood frozen in the VIP section, Harold McVeigh's face ashen as he stared down at his unconscious son. Teachers who had looked the other way now avoided meeting Zariah's gaze. Students who had laughed at Bryce's bullying sat in stunned silence, their phones still recording every second. Medical personnel swarmed the field, checking Bryce's vital signs. He was breathing, but he wouldn't be waking up anytime soon. The same boy who had tried to break her in that dark gym was now being carefully lifted onto a stretcher. His invincibility shattered in front of everyone who had ever feared or worshipped him. Zariah remained in the center of the field, her body screaming for rest, but her spirit unbroken. The stadium lights cast her shadow long and dark across the grass, a silhouette of defiance against all the forces that had tried to make her small, silent, afraid. Ms. Rhonda emerged from the crowd, tears streaming down her face as she watched the girl she'd helped stand tall in her moment of victory. Somewhere in the stands, Marisol Vega clutched her phone, recording everything, finally seeing her tormentor face consequences. And at the edge of the field, Denise Bell watched her daughter with a mixture of fear and fierce pride. The fluorescent lights of the Whitestone Community Center buzzed overhead as the emergency school board meeting came to order. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. News cameras lined the back of the room, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. Zariah sat in the front row between her mother and their attorney, her face still marked by yellowing bruises. Her swollen eye had begun to heal but remained partially closed, a visible reminder of the violence that had brought them all here. Board members filed in, their usual confidence replaced by grim expressions. Harold McVeigh's chair sat conspicuously empty. He'd been asked to recuse himself pending investigation. The interim chairperson, Dr. Martinez, adjusted her microphone. This emergency session will address the recent incidents at Whitestone Academy and examine evidence of systematic misconduct, she announced, her voice carrying through the packed room. We have multiple witnesses scheduled to testify. Marisol Vega was the first to speak. She gripped the podium with trembling hands, but kept her voice steady as she detailed Bryce's harassment, the assault at the party, and Harold McVeigh's calculated cover-up. They told me no one would believe me, she said, tears streaming down her face. They said it would be easier if I just left. So I did. I've regretted my silence every day since. Mrs. Rhonda testified next, her normally quiet demeanor replaced by quiet determination. She described years of witnessing abuse, documenting incidents, and being warned to stay quiet or lose her job. I kept every note, she said, placing a thick folder on the table. Every complaint that was buried, every incident report that disappeared. Names, dates, details, all of it. The security footage played on large screens, showing the brutal gym attack in stark detail. Several people gasped as they watched 3 athletes ambush a single girl. The timestamps were clear. The identities unmistakable. There was no room for denial. This footage has been authenticated by 2 independent experts, the district attorney announced. We are pursuing criminal charges against all 3 assailants, as well as investigating multiple adults for endangering minors and obstruction of justice. Coach Holloway sat stone-faced as former players described his enabling behavior, the way he'd encouraged aggression off the field and helped cover up accidents in training. His attorney whispered urgently in his ear as more damaging testimony piled up. When Zariah finally took the stand, the room fell completely silent. Her one good eye swept across the audience, settling briefly on the empty chairs where Bryce and his father should have been sitting. I came to this school to learn, she began, her voice clear and controlled. Instead, I learned how power protects itself, how bullies choose targets they think won't fight back, how adults look away when it's convenient. She detailed the escalating harassment, the administration's indifference, and the calculated attempt to paint her as the aggressor. As she spoke, images from her documented evidence appeared on screen. The vandalized locker, the threatening messages, the racial slurs. "I wasn't angry because I lost control," she continued, her words cutting through the tension. "I was angry because they thought I wouldn't fight, because they've gotten away with this so many times before, because they thought I'd be another quiet victim." The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages showed Harold McVeigh orchestrating cover-ups. Email chains revealed systematic suppression of complaints. Financial records exposed suspicious payments to families who suddenly withdrew their children. The district attorney stood. "We are expanding our investigation to include potential civil rights violations, witness tampering, and conspiracy charges." Mr. McVeigh was arrested this morning. His son remains under medical supervision, but will face charges upon release. As the hearing continued, Denise's phone buzzed with messages from hospital administrators across the state. Her stance against corruption had caught attention, and offers were pouring in. Better positions, higher pay, fresh starts. The GoFundMe that someone had started for Zariah's legal fees hit 6 figures by lunch. Comments poured in from across the country. "Stand your ground. We believe you. Thank you for fighting back." Local police confirmed they were reviewing years of buried complaints. The State Education Board announced an audit of all Whitestone policies. Civil rights organizations pledged support for pending lawsuits. Coach Holloway was formally terminated, his personnel file marked to prevent future teaching positions. The assistant principal resigned. Several board members announced they would not seek re-election. A coalition of parents demanded systematic changes, new leadership, mandatory bias training, transparent reporting systems, real consequences for harassment. The interim board began drafting new policies before the hearing even ended. Outside, protesters held signs reading, "No more cover-ups," and "Justice for all students." News vans lined the street, reporters going live with updates as more revelations emerged. Months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Zariah walked through Whitestone's gates again. Her injuries had healed, leaving only faint scars as reminders. Students parted before her like water, their eyes down, their whispers hushed. The Confederate plaques were gone from the office walls. New security cameras covered every corner. Fresh paint covered old slurs. A civil rights attorney now served as compliance officer, her office door always open. Zariah moved through the halls with measured steps, her head high, her fists relaxed at her sides. She passed Bryce's old locker, now assigned to someone else. His football trophies had been removed from the display case, along with his father's donor plaques. Students watched her pass, but no one dared touch her. Not anymore. Not ever again. The silence that followed her wasn't born of fear. It was built of respect, tinged with shame, seasoned with the knowledge that one girl's refusal to break had broken a system instead. Zariah took her seat in first period, pulled out her books, and began her day. She didn't need to look over her shoulder anymore. She'd already fought her war, and won. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.